These Violent Delights, Chapter 9. When I peeked into his room, he was sleeping so soundly that I was a little afraid he had died in the night, Marshall said, nudging the dead man with his foot. I think he was faking it. Benedict rolled his eyes, then swatted Marshall's foot away from the corpse. Could you give Roma some credit? I think Roma is a pathological liar, Marshall replied, shrugging. He merely did not want to come out with us to look at dead bodies. Daylight had broken only an hour ago, but the streets were already roaring with activity. The sounds of waves crashing onto the nearby boardwalk was barely audible from the alleyway, not with the chatter streaming in from the inner city. The early morning glow encased the cold streets like an aura. Steam on the ports and the smoke from the factories pumped steadily upward, thick, sooty, and heavy. Oh, hush, Benedict said. You're distracting me from said task of inspecting dead bodies. Frowning deeply, he was kneeling over the corpse that Marshall had nudged into the wall. Again, Benedict and Marshall had been assigned cleanup duty, which not only encompassed the cleanup of the bloody corpses, but also the cleanup of the municipal officers involved, paying off any and every legal force that tried to instill themselves upon these dead gangsters. Distracting you? Marshall dropped to a squat so that he was level with Benedict. If that is so, you should thank me for relieving the morbidity. I would thank you if you helped me out, Benedict muttered. We need these men identified before noon. At this rate, the only thing will be identified is the number of bodies here. He rolled his eyes. Then Marshall looked around and started counting. 6, Mars. 6, Marshall repeated. 6 dead bodies. 6-digit contracts. 6 moons circling the world. Marshall adored the sound of his own voice. In any circumstance where there was silence, he took it upon himself as a favor to the world to fill it. Don't start. Benedict's protest went unheard. Shall I compare him to a winter's night? Marshall proclaimed. More breathtaking and more rugged, tempest breeze do tremble with less might. You saw a stranger for 2 seconds on the street, Benedict interrupted dully. Please calm down. With eyes like deadly nightshade, lips like fresh fruit, a freckle atop his left cheek like... Marshall paused, then suddenly shot to his feet, like this strangely shaped spot on the ground. Benedict stopped short, frowning. He stood too, squinting at the culpable object on the ground. It was much more than just a strange-shaped spot. It's another insect. Marshall lifted a leg onto a jutting brick on the wall. Oh, please, no. Between the cracks in the pavement, a black speck dotted the cement. Ordinary upon a mere cursory glance, but just as an artist could pick out one accidental jerk of the paintbrush amid a smorgasbord of intentional slashes, the moment Benedict's eyes landed on the speck, a shudder swept down his spine and told him that the canvas of the world had made a mistake. This creature wasn't supposed to be here. It's a shame, he said, gingerly pinching his finger around the insect. It's the same sort of insect as the ones we found on the port and took to the laboratory. When Benedict picked up the single dead thing that showed it to his wayward friend, he inspected Marshall to make some crude comment or construct a song about the fragility of life. Instead, Marshall furrowed his brows. Do you remember Czarina? He asked suddenly. Even for Marshall's usual tangents and long-winded stories, this abrupt topic switch was odd. Still, Benedict entertained him and replied, Of course. Their golden retriever had passed away only last year. It had been a strange, mournful day, both in respect for their furry companion and particularly over a death for once hadn't occurred with the press of a bullet and a spray of blood. Do you remember when Lord Montague first got her? Marshall continued. Do you remember her bounding through the streets and rubbing noses with every other animal she encountered, be it a cat or a wild rat? Marshall was trying to get at something, but Benedict could not yet determine what. He would never understand the way people like Marshall talked, in circles upon circles until his speech was outrageous, swallowing itself. Yes, of course, Benedict answered, frowning. She caught so many fleas that they were jumping in and out of her fur. The Ouroboros finally spat out its own tail. Knife. Benedict motioned for Marshall to rummage through his pockets. Give me your knife. Without missing a beat, Marshall flicked the blade free and tossed the handle. The handle glided into Benedict's palm cleanly, and Benedict sliced the point down, shearing a strip through the corpse's hair as thoroughly as he could. When the loose hair fell to the ground, Benedict and Marshall leaned in at once to examine the dead man's scalp. Only then did Benedict nearly throw up inside his mouth. "That," Marshall deadpanned, "is disgusting." There was only an inch of skin in show, an inch of gray-white between two crops of thick black hair. But in this space, a dozen pinky-sized bumps bulged forth, dotted homes for dead insects that had taken up residence just below the first layer of skin. Benedict's scalp itched with phantom crawling at the sight, and the curled exoskeletons thinly visible under the membrane, at the legs and the antennae and the thoraxes trapped and frozen in time. Benedict tightened his grip on the knife, cursing himself for his curiosity. He slowly flattened the tufts of dead man's hair so it wasn't blocking his view of the exposed skin. Then, with his teeth gritted together and a wince dancing at the edge of his tongue, he pushed the tip of the blade into one of the bumps. There was no sound of release nor any fluid discharge, as Benedict had been expecting from a sight so disgusting. Intense silence, intercepted only by the occasional toot of a car chugging along the nearby street, Benedict used the knife to slit the thin skin atop one of the dead insects. "Go on," Benedict said when one formerly buried insect became semi-exposed. "Give it a pull." Marshall looked at him, as if he had suggested that they both slaughter a baby and eat it. "You must be joking." "My hands are both occupied, Mars." "I hate you." Marshall inhaled a deep breath. He stuck 2 fingers gingerly into the slit. He pulled out the dead insect. It came into the world with veins and vessels and capillaries attached to its belly. It was as if the insect were an entity unto itself, and the dead man grew out of it, when in reality the paper-thin lines of pink and white sprouting from the insect were being pulled from the man's brain. Benedict's could have been fooled. The veins trembled as the stray gust of wind blew in from the waterfront. "What do you know?" Benedict said. "I think we just discovered what's causing the madness."